Over the past few centuries, technology has become really powerful. We have been able to do so many incredible things: land rovers on Mars, video chat with each other at the speed of light, and produce so many goods that we've changed the atmosphere of the planet. When we think about civilization's progress, we often equate progress with technological progress, and it's clear that we've made great strides. However, what about the things that haven't changed as much over these few centuries? Our emotional intelligence has not grown as much as our technological intelligence. We still wage wars for resources or for hateful reasons. We still ignore human rights all over the world. We're often frightfully bad at understanding each other and empathizing with our neighbors. This raises a question: are we ready for technology that is so powerful that it can affect humanity's existence as a whole? Are we ready for technology that brings us into the realm of the existential? We should begin by thinking about what it even means to make technological progress. There are two major components that we can think about: progress of power and progress of scope. So what do we mean by progress of power? As an example, let's take a bow and arrow in comparison to a gun. Both are technologies that launch projectiles, but their powers are different. One launches with much more force and accuracy than the other. So what can we define as power? Well, power is simply the ease with which something accomplishes a task. And it's important to note that power and powerful technologies, indeed all technologies, are morally agnostic. A technology's morality lies in the task it's used for, not its inherent design. Some examples of technologies that are incredibly powerful, that accomplish tasks that would be very hard or take a long time otherwise, are nuclear weapons, accomplishing wide-scale destruction; supercomputers, performing incredible calculations and modeling; or robotic manufacturing facilities, performing fast and efficient production. The other arm of technological progress is what we identified as progress of scope. How many individuals are affected by a single technology in a short amount of time? A good example to illustrate scope is the difference between posting something on a local bulletin board and posting something on Facebook. Your news can reach most of the entire world on Facebook, and anyone can almost instantly access it. On a bulletin board, only those local to the board will be able to read your post, and the time it takes is slower, however long it takes them to physically move to the board. Some examples of technologies that operate on a very large scope are digital or analog news media, projecting news to thousands of people at once; the internet, connecting billions at light speed; or a large power grid, supplying energy to thousands at once. Some technologies check both of these boxes at the same time, and those are the ones we'll identify as existential technologies. They simultaneously affect a lot of us and accomplish very difficult things quickly. When we think of technologies at the existential, some obvious ones jump out. Nuclear weapons are both powerful in their destructive capabilities and affect a very large area, potentially including hundreds of thousands of people. Machine learning systems process millions of people's data and filter information in less than a second after having learned patterns. Global fossil fuel-based manufacturing systems are powerful technologies of production that change our climate, affecting the entire planet and ecosystem as a result. These technologies have proven to be incredibly dangerous, and therefore must be used, or not used, very responsibly. So now we should return to our earlier thought about the morality of technologies. Are all existential technologies morally corrupt? Well, no. Like any individual technology, for example, a gun, any moral charge we assign to the technology itself is really just the morality of its usage, which depends on the user using it. Now, this can be a very controversial notion, because it's often used politically to justify the existence and sale of technologies which are clearly more often used in a morally corrupt way. For a dive into that world, you need only scour the conversations surrounding gun violence and the NRA. But to be truly honest with ourselves, a gun could be something that's always used to simply harvest fruit from tall trees because of its long-range projectile capabilities. Society could be such that using a gun to kill people would never be thought of. Just as a society that only uses guns to harvest fruit is probably something we have never thought of. We can't help but think of them as weapons. It would be hard to think of them just as tools, given their predominant use cases in our culture. But this notion of morality is key when thinking not just about classical technologies, but especially existential technologies. The reason we may jump to assuming existential technologies' power and breadth would affect society negatively is because we typically see powerful technologies used for morally corrupt purposes. A more responsible society may view nuclear technology as something that would clearly only be used for energy generation or research, not even conceiving of its use for violence or war. Use of existential technologies depends on the will of those who sit at their helm. And often those individuals tend to be power-hungry, money-hungry, or hold some other morally reprehensible trait. And thus, we've arrived at a deep takeaway from our reflection on existential technologies. While our societies are very good at advancing technology, our moral progress, which largely determines how these advanced technologies are used, has been sorely lagging behind. We can say fairly certainly that the way modern societies and economies are set up are such that they function as mechanisms to drive towards technological progress, and relegate driving towards social, moral, cultural, individual, or emotional progress to the back seat. Without arriving at sweeping conclusions, this begs a handful of questions. As more technologies operate on the level of the existential, is it still justified to have these incentive structures and governments that only care about technological progress? Are measures of GDP or the tenets of capitalism still beneficial to continuing society, or rather more detrimental at this point? Should we keep progressing technology, even though the underlying morals which drive its use are sorely primitive? As a scientist, am I even justified in pushing the boundaries of technological capability, leading to increasingly more powerful technologies instead of dedicating my time to advancing moral or social knowledge? Can we create alternative incentive structures, economies, or governance and accountability structures that take these considerations into account? What would a monetary system look like that includes some measures of morality? Citizens who are affected by these technologies should likely have some sort of say in how they're used, so the effects don't depend on the morality of just an individual, but rather the aggregate morality of an entire society. So how would that be modeled? As more and more technologies break into the realm of the existential, these questions will become more and more important and obvious to ask. We must continue to evaluate the power and scope of technologies to assess how dangerous or beneficial they could be. We need to ask these hard questions about how our values drive technological use. Conversations like this should be happening more often and encouraged by those who work with technology, in order to allow society to gain a critical view of systems that truly affect us all. Simply talking about it may make the difference between a society that destroys itself with its powerful technology and immature psyches, and a society that flourishes, truly unifying under common, cooperative goals, and working towards a technological future that uses powerful and far-reaching systems for the benefit of everybody. We welcome you to join us on this journey as we explore the hidden depths of human creativity. The road may be long and winding, but we're committed to changing the conversation surrounding technologies in our lives. Part of our goal is to bring a sense of community to our world of technology. Our devices sometimes serve to alienate us, so we would rather work to reverse this trend. For this reason, we encourage you all to share these ideas with your friends, families, coworkers, whomever, in order to develop a collective consciousness of understanding. We too love to hear from those who absorb our ideas and have thoughts of their own. Engaging with us on YouTube or on social media are great ways to grow the community of those who think and care about technology. The more we talk with each other about the systems that govern our lives, the better we'll be able to shape the present and future so our inventions work for us rather than exploit us. It'll take a bit of thought and a bit of effort, but we can work together to craft the technological future that we all deserve.